Bad governance. There's a lot of discussion about good governance as a prerequisite for a fair and prosperous society. However, we have neglected the subject of bad governance and government tyranny. I would like to share with you all today my views about governments and some of their fundamental flaws. I believe that governments should be distrusted and have limited power. I will explain this to you through a few examples of government failure, and then I will show an example of Milton Friedman speaking about the role governments should play. So, why should we distrust the central government? The main issue that governments have is that there is a gap between policy and implementation. When policymakers draft a proposal, they often fail to take into account the self-serving interest of people. This has to do with the principal-agent theory. So how does the principal, the government, get the agents, the citizens, to do what the government wants? This results in policy often being implemented in an unexpected way, which usually causes significant problems. Another factor that amplifies the issue of the principal-agent theory is that central governments lack proper oversight into the details, because of the distance to the actual problem they are trying to solve. Therefore, they will likely come up with ineffective solutions to problems that are ill-defined. When unaddressed, these issues lead to corrupt and exploitative governments, such as seen in the Dutch colonial government in Indonesia. Central governments are also responsible for the unintended deaths of millions of people, such as in Stalinist Russia, Maoist China, or Dutch Indonesia, where people were relentlessly oppressed and starved. Even today we are experiencing the failures of central governments. The US, for example, is in debt and inflating their currency at an unprecedented rate. China, too, has doomed itself with its central policies. The one-child policy has crippled their demography, and their centrally planned housing market is about to collapse, which accounts for nearly 30% of China's GDP and involves massive amounts of debt. I want to make the claim that the best governance is limited governance. Throughout history, people have been under the oppression and tyranny of the group and the collective. Only in the West has this restriction been lifted and the power of the individual unleashed. This resulted in the greatest era of technological progress ever. This system works so well because the government doesn't do much. And because the government doesn't do much, they can't make so many mistakes. Limited governments avoid many of the problems illustrated before, and therefore they did so well. Having no government is of course not an option. We need the government to do things. Anarchy just leads to more government eventually, and likely a more tyrannical government than the previous one. Here I have a video from Milton Friedman explaining what the government should do. I highly recommend people look into this.
I'm not an anarchist. I believe in a government, but a limited government. And the government should be limited, in my opinion, to very simple functions. Number one, to defending the country against foreign enemies. I have tried for a long time to see how to make national defense a private enterprise, and I have never succeeded. It's easy to see how to privatize schooling, but I don't know how to privatize national defense. So I'm reconciled to the fact that we're going to have to pay twice as much as we should have to pay in order to get an effective national defense. Because anything government does, on the average, there's some things that are more, some less, on the average anything government does costs twice as much as if it were being done by private enterprise. So one function of government is to protect the country against foreign enemies, national defense. A second function of government, and one which it performs very, very badly, is to protect the individual citizen against abuse and coercion by other citizens, to keep you from being hit over the head, mugged on the street, your house broken into, and so on. And I believe that the government performs that function very ineffectively because it's doing so many things it has no business doing. The third function of government, a very important function, is to define the rules of the game we play. What's private property? If an airplane flies 10,000 feet over your house, is he violating your private property? If he flies 10 feet over your house, is he violating your private property? There's nothing natural about where the line should be drawn. So we have to have some mechanism for making the rules about that, and that is an appropriate government function. And fourth, it's appropriate for government to provide a mechanism for adjudicating disputes about the meaning of those rules, a judicial system. Those are the four essential functions of government, in my opinion, and those are the only functions that are essential. There may be some other areas in which if you started with nothing more than that, government might conceivably do more good than harm. But from where you are now, if you could only move back in that direction, it would be marvelous. There's no way you're going to do it. The best you can hope for is that you can hold down government, keep it where it is, and let the private economy expand so that government becomes a smaller and smaller fraction of it. And even that is a very optimistic expectation, though it's possible.
This is not to discourage individuals from attempting to change things through the government, but more as a warning. If you as a government representative want to implement a policy, you have to be extraordinarily careful not to make the situation worse than it already is. Because it's a lot harder to make something better than to make something worse. Do you agree with me? Why? Or why not? Let me know in the comment section and let's discuss this so that we can learn from each other. Thank you for listening.